Anybody who's ever had a massive impact on the world did two things. One, they had a deep technical expertise, something that no one else had. This gets to your point. But they also had the ability to positively influence others. By influence, sometimes it can sound manipulative. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about to develop relationships, to figure out and learn somebody else's priorities, to align your expertise with their needs, things like that, to build a relationship ecosystem. So anybody that's only got the expert side of it, either not enough people know about them, or they can come across as sort of an arrogant jerk.
Mo Bunnell is the founder and CEO of an Atlanta-based training company that has helped thousands of business development people get better at selling, Bunnell Idea Group. Mo's workshops have developed people from such firms as investment banker Goldman Sachs, consulting firm Oliver Wyman, and the international law firm King & Spalding. The reason for my interview with Mo is that he just published his second book, Give to Grow, and I think it provides great advice not only for salespeople in B2B companies, but also for thought leaders and thought leadership professionals. Mo explains why forming value-added relationships with certain clients and prospects is as valuable as dazzling them with your insights. Great to be here with you, Mo. We met more than a year ago. I was looking through my files, and I appeared on your podcast, Real Relationships, Real Revenue, in February of 23, and that was about a year after I published my book. Now we're reversing things, right? You've just published a book, Give to Grow, and it's your second book. And you've got podcasters like me who want to talk to you about the book.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a nice role reversal here. And I know it's early days in the promotion of your book, but is it too early to see some of the impact in the marketplace? What have you felt?
Oh, man. Well, we can measure it. So what I think is cool about thought leadership, books is one example of that, is you can measure its impact. So you can look at how many speeches did we get? How many people reach out to us? What's the activity? And I wouldn't be surprised. We're 6 weeks in. We've already got 2.5 times as many books in circulation as we've had with 6 years with our first book, The Snowball System. So the platform's bigger, the demand for Give to Grow, I think just because of the title Give to Grow, I think it appealed to people. So we can already see early indicators of a lot more people are buying the book. And then I would guess within a year, all of our investment, if we look at both monetary investment and adding up people's time, which is significant. I've got over 1,000 hours in the project so far. I would say within a year, we will be well over break even economically. And then it's just all rolling downhill after that. So thought leadership works, Bob, as you know, if you do it right. And we're going to talk about the right ways to do it today. How about that?
That's what I've heard. Leadership works. Was there ever a moment in the life of this project during your 1,000 hours where you had doubts, where you said, I'm not sure is this going to be a good book? I've spent a lot of time. I got a business to run.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, well, maybe I'll punt. I'll do this in a year or two.
I had a lot more in the first book because I didn't have a model and I didn't economically know what the payoff was. But we measured our success with the first book, and it made a step change in the business because of it, because of Snowball System. It was so well received, won a bunch of awards, all kinds of things, and just people love it. The part in Give to Grow where I wouldn't say I thought about punting, but I would say the part that was hard was in the middle of writing the manuscript. So it was about 1.5 years ago. I took some time off in the summer from, 1.5 years ago from when we're recording now. And I had about 3 weeks dedicated to finishing the manuscript. And Bob, at the lowest point of that, the manuscript was around almost 100,000 words, a little bit less. And I knew it had to be 40. And on the first draft of all these chapters, the writing isn't good. The thoughts aren't coherent. Flow isn't as logical as I want. It's too wordy. And I also knew that I had to destroy over half of what I was creating, but I didn't know which half. And that was massively hard. By like 3:00 each day, I would just have to go on a walk and like not have a podcast on or anything, just like stare at trees. But I kept powering through that. And then just slowly, by the time you're at third, fourth, fifth iteration of something, it actually starts to get coherent. And then my editor helped a lot structurally. So we started to say, listen, he had to say it. He's like, those 4 chapters, Mo, they're really good stuff, but maybe that's your next book. So he said it really nicely, like we'd actually use it someday. Not sure we will, but at the time it let me move it into it. Didn't delete it, just put it in a Google Doc. I may never look at it again. But we started to get winnowed down to something that was good. And once we got to around 50,000 words, then I could actually edit and delete a paragraph, get at the sentence level and make a sentence crisper in 5 words instead of 8. That's when it actually started being fun. So I don't know, that might be too long-winded of an answer, but I think the learning for me is when we're building really meaningful thought leadership, and the bigger the project, the harder this part is, you've got to get through the messy middle and just keep visualizing in your mind. There's this exciting outcome out there where somebody's going to read your book and it's going to change their life, and you handed it to them in 2 seconds. That's what I kept thinking about. And it's just focusing on that exciting outcome in the future is what kept powering me through this painful part in the middle.
I'm glad you stayed the course because it's a really great book.
Thank you.
It's a great book. More than just for business development people. I would give this to every young person starting out in their career, graduating college or going from high school to, the world of work, and looking at careers through a different lens, through your lens, which is, you can look at life as being a bunch of transactions, especially business life. If that's all you do, there's a good chance your career growth is going to be limited. It has much, much greater appeal. Let's talk about your concept for the book in short. What would be your elevator pitch for someone who said, hey, I heard you wrote a book. You got 2 minutes or 3 minutes with this person in an elevator. What do you say?
Yeah, I would say, hey, Bob, do you know how all kinds of experts that rise to a point in their career where they develop their expertise, and at some point, they've got to actually find people to hire them for it? You've seen that before, right?
Oh, yeah, many times.
Well, there's lots of mechanisms for internally in an organization to teach the expert part of the business. I mean, heck, just doing the work makes you better at doing the work. But there's not a lot of systems to teach how do you win the work? How do you develop relationships? How do you build an ecosystem around you that's sending you referrals and leads and makes people predisposed to want to use you? Those are the skills we teach. Once you're over on that side of the fence, and you've got your core expertise, and you start to build the expertise, or realize at least you need to build the expertise of winning work, not just doing it. Then you've got 2 paths. You can either, to your point, be transactional which is sales, air quotes around that for our audio listeners, or you can go down a different path, a path around relationships, a path that says, I'm going to be helpful, but I'm going to do it very strategically in a way I help the right people in the right ways. That happens to, I think, expected value, I think it's going to help me too. And by leaning into that winning of the work activities with generosity and helpfulness, but doing it in the way we describe in the book, Give to Grow, you can actually grow a huge book of business. And the best part is feel great about it. Instead of being transactional, you're always being helpful. You're just doing it in a way that helps you too.
I think that's great. What I've seen over the years working with aspiring thought leaders and folks who are thought leaders, who are generally recognized as thought leaders, is this belief that my wisdom, my being famous, my big idea, that's what's going to attract a client to me. And I don't need to build a relationship. They're going to be attracted to the ideas and the fact they're talking to the thought leader on this issue. Have you seen the same thing in your career with thought leaders who think, oh, it's my wisdom, my intellectual capital, my books, my Harvard Business Review article, they just want to be with gurus in so many words, and I don't need to care about the person in front of me to get the work and to keep the work?
Yeah, 100%. I do see it. And those people are not as effective as they could be. So if we think of anybody, and I really don't think I don't think there's anybody who doesn't fit that. Anybody who's ever had a massive impact on the world, they had 2 things. One, they had a deep technical expertise, something that no one else had. This gets to your point. But they also had the ability to positively influence others. And I mean that by influence, sometimes it can sound manipulative. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about to develop relationships, to figure out and learn somebody else's priorities, to align your expertise with their needs, things like that, to build a relationship ecosystem. So anybody that's only got the expert side of it, either not enough people know about them, or they can come across as sort of an arrogant jerk, to be honest. But if we can pair the 2 things, a deep technical expertise with the ability to build a relationship ecosystem that people are your raving fans. They're running around almost as fractional salespeople, fractional business developers, because they like you so much. They love your stuff and they like you so much. They're running around telling others about you. That is the winning strategy. So you and I we can riff on that all day long, because I think it's really cool how we combine Competing on Thought Leadership, which is a book I love, with Give to Grow. There's a process where we can think through, how do you create the right thought leadership that is attractive and also get a small army of raving fans running around telling people about it? That's where the magic is.
Yeah. And there's people I know, thought leaders, who fit this bill. One is Dave Ulrich, who is a guru on human resource issues. But Dave has over 200,000 LinkedIn followers, and he posts a lot. And every time somebody puts a comment in one of his posts, he responds to those comments. And it's, even if he disagrees, it's always a graceful response, but he responds. And so he's built an audience that I think he's showing he is truly interested in their ideas. He's truly interested in having a relationship. He's not just dropping his ideas on LinkedIn and hoping people come to his site. He's really engaging in conversation.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think Justin Welsh is another good example, a friend that you may know. Justin, he's got 800,000 followers. He is more of an expert on like how to use LinkedIn. And he's using LinkedIn to teach how to use LinkedIn, but similarly responds to everybody. Another way people can do this that's really practical, you've got a lot of thought leader practitioners that watch and listen to your show, is one of the things they can do with the thought leaders themselves is say, hey, I would be happy to help guide you through the process of creating the client alert, or help write the chapter in the book that you want to be in, or whatever it is. But what most thought leaders will do is they'll envision the finish line as creating the content. Great, we published the client alert, it's on the website, it went through all the reviews, I'm done. Thought leadership practitioners, I want you to remember this, right at the beginning of engagement, when you're working internally, you're working with that thought leader, you want to set the finish line as like a year after publishing the piece. So let's think all the way through from a prospect perspective and think, how can we write the best content? How can we publish it everywhere we can, one to many, all the stuff that we're already doing? But then also in our organization, who else, what other clients and prospects should know about this? Which people own those relationships? How can we get them involved in understanding the thought leadership that we're creating before it's even created? How can we orchestrate ways to speak at conferences, have one-on-one meetings where we fly to a city where a huge client is that would be interested in this? How can we orchestrate a great event? How can we get a small army of folks internally or partners that are aligned with us externally to take that thought leadership, share it with others, and set up one-to-one meetings with clients? That's where the magic is. And all of this can be thought through from A to Z in the beginning, so that as we're actually building the thought leadership, we're actually also thinking about how we're going to get it out in the marketplace. That is really, it's something most thought leaders don't think a lot about at all. And it's something your practitioners can help folks think through right in the beginning and execute on over a long period of time. That's where the results are. And that's where we're pairing the expertise with the relationship ecosystem, not just the expertise part.
I love that. And over my career, I've seen a lot of thought leadership practitioners, people like me, who have looked at working with the experts and getting them into HBR or ghostwriting a white paper, engagements, that kind of thing, as the same thing, a transaction. Hey, I'm going to work with this thought leader this week, and then this next thought leader the next week, and they may not talk to the thought leader they worked with this week for a year or two, right? It's a series of transactions. I'll help you, get known for your expertise. And I've also seen those thought leadership practitioners often hit a ceiling.
Yes.
Number one, people in the firm don't really like them a lot, no matter how talented they are. He or she is out for themselves. And others who often are less talented thought leadership practitioners who invest in building the relationship of helping the thought leader or thought leaders in the firm achieve what they want to achieve. Those people often become, overly turned to by thought leaders. Help me with this white paper. I know you can do it, Bob. Or the words are, I love working with this person. I love working with this person.
Yeah.
Some others I know, I think, don't hear those words enough. I love working with this person.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. I think it's really helpful sometimes to give really practical phrases to say. And one that marries just a line beautifully with what you just shared. I love working with this person, or I love working with you. Let's take your career to the next level. Another great one that I think you saw in Gift Grow is, would it be helpful if? Would it be helpful if we mapped out a strategy not only to create the content, which, gosh, I hope they're using your book for this because it's so good. Like, I just opened the 9 elements of exceptional content. You've got just so many practical things in the book. Anyway, the would it be helpful if could be, hey, thought leader, would it be helpful if I not only helped you craft great content, but gosh, would it be helpful for me to map out a strategy to get you in front of all the right people, not only amplification sources like you being quoted in the Wall Street Journal or HBR or whatever, but also, hey, let's think, maybe we map out all the clients that you'd like to be introduced to, and I can help make some introductions internally to help you meet the client relationship leader for each one of those, and we can share your content. I can share it as we develop it, save you some time, and pitch to the other client leaders that they should be introducing you to their clients. Would that be helpful? Well, doing that is a real easy way to widen the aperture of the thought leader to think it's not just writing the content, it's how am I going to get it out there. And as the thought leader practitioner, then you can also be helping them say, I'm going to map this out for you. That's going to blow people away.
I would also think you also become the thought leadership practitioner. Perception moves from order taker, and so when
Yes.
to problem solver or
Advisor.
Advisor, trusted advisor, which is so important, especially for people who are early into their careers in the thought leadership profession, or mid-career externalists who have good writing and reporting skills, who are hired by the McKinseys and Boston Consulting Groups
Yep.
and much smaller professional firms, law firms, veteran journalists who don't know how to form relationships for these people, many of whom in the past, given they were journalists, would have adversarial relationships, which is what journalists typically have to do to report the truth, to gather the truth and report it, is you have to, you're not looking to build a relationship.
Yeah.
I think your advice is also on point for mid-career people who come into the thought leadership profession and just think, well, I'm going to wow them with my writing skills, and this is just a series of transactions, and I'll wow the next person, and the person after that will get this article will be great. Not putting time into giving and growing the relationship, as you put it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things in Give to Grow that your practitioners, well, and your thought leaders too, can grab a hold of, we can talk through, is one of the most powerful ways to deepen a relationship is to ask some thought-provoking questions that learn the other side's priorities in their own words, to play that back to them, make sure you got it right, because that's when the client, air quotes around that, might be an internal client in this case, that's where the client feels like you get it. So if I'm a thought leader practitioner and I'm meeting with a senior partner at a professional service firm and they've got this big idea that they want to write an article about, whatever it is, it would be easy, to your point, to just jump right in. Okay, let's start writing it. I'm thinking of these outlets. Here's how I'd write it. But if we can pop up a level and ask him or her, hey, what are your goals in this? Is it to earn a seat at the table? Is it brand building? Do you actually want to spin up a new practice area or trying to drive business to a certain functional area of the firm? Well, learning those priorities, and Give to Grow teaches the exact questions to ask around this, and then playing that back to them, that is going to elevate your status so that you're able to say, hey, no problem, we can jump right in and I can give you a structure for what an article would look like. But maybe we ought to think about this partner of ours that's a tech partner that's aligned with this particular kind of consulting, because they might be really interested in running around to this article around to all their clients, and they have about 100 times more clients than we do. Would you like me to make an introduction? So this is just a simple idea, but I think those unlocks happen when the thought leader practitioner asks the thought leader, what are your big goals for this? They might not even know. They might just excited about the idea, but get them to articulate it and then move into that trusted advisor role, like you said, Bob, and start advising them on the bigger things they should be thinking about. Writing the article is one thing. Getting it in front of the right people and driving business is a whole nother. We want to be the advisor on the whole A to Z spectrum there, not just on the I'm going to crank out an article for you. What's your take on that? Because like you see this as much as more than I do.
Well, I think it's spot on. And it's spot on because I think that a lot of thought leaders or aspiring thought leaders, if they don't know the thought leadership professional, the ghostwriter, the marketing person, they don't know that person well enough. They don't know whether to trust that person.
Yeah.
Especially if you say, I think you should co-author this piece because we're missing a critical piece here. Hate to tell you this, Bruce. There's a key piece to this, and I know somebody in the firm who is a deep expert in X. So what would you think about co-authoring the article? That's a difficult conversation to have with a thought leader who doesn't trust you and wonders whose interests you're trying to promote. So unless you have that relationship,
Yep.
those kind of suggestions are probably not going to be taken well, in my experience. They're going to be saying, no. I told you to write this article. I'm the sole author. Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. And the worst case is you fall back into that. I'm just going to help write this thing for you. But to your point, I think most people actually want sage advice. They want folks to help them see around corners. And a lot of times in reactive mode, somebody just knocks on a thought leader practitioner door, or even a client knocks on a thought leader door and says, hey, tell me the thing or help me do the thing. But they might be thinking too small. And I think that's a lot of times the case. So if we can move in that advisor role, hear what their goals are, and broaden their perspective on what can be accomplished. I mean, I don't know anybody that if they're going to invest a unit of 1 in writing some content, then say they were expecting 1.5 result of it. I don't know anybody that wouldn't want to get a 20 result out of it. So if we can advise them on, hey, you're going to do the same amount of work, but I'm going to get you this big, massive result that's bigger than you were thinking. Everybody leaves that conversation happy and excited and raving about you to other people. So anyway.
Absolutely. So let's talk about a different kind of persona in this mix, which is the business development person in a professional services firm. He or she has been told by corporate executive board about the challenger sale. And the way I look at the challenger sale, well, this is thought leadership meets, the sales function. This is thought leadership selling, coming in with a very different point of view, reframing the customer's problem, and offering a different solution that your competitors can't offer because you've reframed the problem. So, it can be a very effective way to sell, thought leadership selling. So for those people in professional firms, they get it. Those business developers, they like to be able to position themselves as experts, not just I understand the services our firm sells. I can help the client or prospect kind of think things through and bring different ideas to the prospect. Why would you say even that's not enough? That there's still, you have to invest in growing a relationship for the client to hear the salesperson reframe the ideas and try to spin a different solution.
Yes, and more. Yes. So let me tell a story. I think I'll answer that with a story and then and some steps after that. So we'll go story, then steps. The story. A couple years after Becky and I got married, we've been married 32 years now. We had just moved to Atlanta, and we went out for some kind of celebration. I think it was an anniversary, and we went out with another couple. And Bob, we chose a restaurant that was way above our price range. It was one of the hot tickets in town. Somehow a friend got us in. I don't know. We should not have been there. I mean, we were like making plans on how to not spend money as we were walking in with the other couple, because like we're both young and like it wouldn't be a big deal now. It was a big deal then.
No dessert, no entrees.
Right. We're drinking water. Remember, we're drinking water. Remember.
And the cheapest bottle of wine. That's it. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah. Well, you hit it towards the future. So we get in there and, we're all looking at the menu like, oh my gosh, this is worse than we thought. And a sommelier comes up and he starts going on and on about this big bottle of red wine. I forget what it was, but he's talking about the vintage and the vineyard and all these other things. And we're all like looking at each other like, yeah, we're not getting that. We're like looking at the price on the menu. Anyway, he walks away and we almost all chuckle, like, wasn't that funny? Until he came back with a small taste for all of us. And 4 small glasses, little taste, and we bought the bottle. And later on that night, we bought a second. So I bought a second bottle. The point with that story is hearing about something is not nearly as compelling as experiencing it yourself. They're not even close. He went on and on about that particular bottle of wine. It seemed like an eternity. But it only took a few seconds to take a sip of it. And that's what actually moved us to purchase. So I think when we apply that to thought leadership, now some steps, we've got to think not only about what's the thought leadership, how is this truly unique? How's it position us uniquely, reframe the problem, all the stuff that you talked about and what your book does an amazing job of telling people how to do. But we also want to think through what's the experience we can offer? What's the back end of the sentence? Hey, Jane, I'm really glad you liked our thought piece on this. Would it be helpful if we blank? What is that? Is it a 1-hour topical discussion? Is it a data analysis where we show some benchmarking and on our dime, we benchmark somebody against something against a database, a subset of something? Is it a 2-hour or 4-hour workshop? Is it an education? Is it a training class? What's the thing that we would be jumping up and down happy that people would say if they said yes to, that we think with 80 or 90% success rates, if they say yes to that, they're going to hire us for all the work that we want. And we call that a give to get. There's a whole chapter on it in Give to Grow, the book. The move is called Give to Get because it's basically like a small, very small free project. The idea behind it is Give to Grow. We're going to invest in other success to succeed ourselves. And if we can think in a 3-step process, if we can think, what's the thought leadership we're going to create? What's the give to get or the half-day workshop, whatever, what's the thing we would offer on our dime to get the party started, to give them the taste of the experience of working with us, that taste of the wine? And then what's the work that we think would align to that? And usually the best way to actually do that 3-step process is backwards. To think first, what's the work we want to get hired to do? Right before that, what's the thing we would offer on our dime to get the conversation started and give the organization an experience of working with us? And then what's the thought leadership that would drive the give to get? So we actually design it backwards and then execute it forwards. And that strategy we have used at literally hundreds of clients, and it generates more revenue than any move I've ever seen in my life.
And does the gift to get also sometimes include letting the prospect talk to other happy clients about the work that the law firm or consulting firm or accounting firm did?
So it could.
They could just hear it from the horse's mouth.
Yep.
Yeah, this worked. This really worked.
Right? Yeah, there's 4 major give to gets. One is something that's analytical. So that's usually benchmarking or providing the survey responses or things like that. That's the first one. The second is procedural, meaning we're like mapping out the process, but we're applying it to the client situation. So we're tweaking things just for them. Like you get to keep it, client. It's almost like an architect stopping by your home and learning about how you want to do the redesign of the house and starting to sketch things out. They're not doing the whole drawings for free, but they might sit down for a few hours and sketch things out and give those to you. So that's the process one. The third would be relational, meaning, hey, would it be helpful if I introduce you to people that have achieved great success doing this exact thing? I'll be there myself to help guide and be matchmaker. That lets you show your expertise while they're talking about how great you are. And then the fourth is some type of brainstorming or ideation kind of session, sort of that blue sky day. Hey, let's map out what the future could look like with Post-it notes and whiteboards, or whether it's virtual or in person. So something analytical, or something procedural, or something relational, or something that's sort of blue sky or brainstorming. Those are typically the 4 give to gets we see. Some are like meshes of 2 or 3 of those, but they all can be massively effective, especially when the right one's played at the right time.
And under the relationship part of that, does investing in somebody's career, helping them move up or sometimes move out because is that part of that as well? Is think about how you could help somebody in his or her career.
It could be. So that sometimes won't be tied to thought leadership. It might be, but I'll say it this way. Anytime we can help somebody in a human way, and how we define that is the 2 big ways to help people are hireable, meaning we're helping them in a way that they could hire us for. And that's that example we talked about before. The other way is helping somebody as a human. helping them think through a sticky situation with the subordinate or their boss or that other function area that they've got to serve but they're not playing nice, or helping them think through their next career move or who they should make in the marketplace. That whole body of ways of being helpful to somebody in a human way, where they can't even really hire you for it because that's not what you do. That, Bob, to your point, that is many times the most compelling, deepest relationship move that we can make. And one of the things we talk about in Give to Grow a lot is looking for ways to help in a hireable way. That's that 3-step process we talked about is one way to do that. But also listening. Maybe we're at lunch and we're doing that relational move where we introduce them to a client of ours, and we've got 10 minutes because the other person's running late, and this prospect says, I just don't know if this company's a good fit for me. Man, leaning into that and being helpful and saying, let's talk later because I can introduce you to some folks and here's some thoughts I have. Like, to your point, finding ways to help in a hireable way is going to be usually the fastest time to revenue, but helping in a human way is going to be the longest tail of revenue, just because you're helping them in ways that you're signaling, I care about you as a human, not just as a budgetary line item. That's good stuff.
Even if you leave that your employer and land somewhere else, I'm still thinking about you.
So worth the effort. I actually, just to go one step farther down the road, personally for me, I actually try even harder when it's those times.
Why? Tell me why. Because one of the questions I'm going to ask you is how you've personally kind of given to grow your firm, especially through helping somebody with a career. You don't know if it's going to pay off financially, but you're invested in this person's career.
Yeah, because I think it's one of those moments where, out of compassion, I just feel like this is the highest value thing I can provide somebody is when they're down on their luck. Maybe they got stuck in a riff. Maybe they don't like it where they're at, whatever. And they're basically signaling, I can't hire you, but I need your help. If we respond to that by going away, which honestly I think most people do, that person's going to remember that forever. They're like, oh, I see what you really cared about, my budget. If we lean in and we help them in that time of need and we just put our own needs aside, people remember that forever. I
was going to ask you if you could give an example of that, and you don't have to name the person.
We can complete each other's sentences. I was going to go in the same place. There was somebody that was at the time one of our biggest clients, and he was a CMO, and I can't say how big of a company because there's only a few companies this big. It would be pretty obvious. When people say they're a Fortune 17 company. Gee, I wonder which one they are. So I'll leave that aside, but let's just say C-level executive at a very large company. He got stuck in a riff, and he called and said, I've really enjoyed working with you. Can you help me out? I said, I would love to. So we had a couple calls, and I was introducing him to different places. And I even said, person, I would like to offer you to come through our full 3-day training that teaches every skill around growth. He had seen parts of it for his teams, but he hadn't seen the whole thing. And I'd like you to come to Atlanta. I'd like to waive the fees for that. That'll save you $5,000. And I would like you to come through, because if you go through all those skills, but with the mindset of finding your next job, because it's basically a business development role when you're trying to find a job, and you can go through the whole thing. And by the way, you're going to meet like 30 or 40 other people that might be interested in helping you too. So you get a double win. And he's like, I would love to do that. Came through. We had dinner while he was in Atlanta. And honestly, Bob, I sort of forgot about it. Like, I helped him. I heard he landed. He called. He said, thank you, all that stuff. Well, like 5 years went by and I hadn't talked to him. And he reached out when Give to Grow, the book came out. And he wanted to have a call to talk about it. And he said, I love this book. Thanks for sending me an advance copy. I want to take it through our organization. By the way, you didn't know it, but that small firm that I joined, we're now like 10,000 people. We have a couple thousand people that can use your help. And we're on this call, and you could just tell he wanted to share a little bit more. I had one of my account managers on the call, so I didn't know if he didn't know her at the time. I didn't know. Anyway, we got to the last 5 minutes, and you could just tell he just had to share something. And he started to tear up in front of this person he doesn't know. And he just said, I don't know if you even remember this, but you helped me when I was down, and I will never forget it in my life. And there was just this silence that fell on the call. And he replayed the things I had done for him. It was long enough ago, and I do this enough. I had actually forgotten I'd done some of those things. But he said the introduction he made for me actually didn't turn out to be where I landed. But I remember more than anybody else, you helped me. And now I want to help you. So anyway, who knows, Bob, if that'll turn into revenue? I don't even care. But at that moment, that was earlier this year, at that moment, I just felt like, A, I'm really glad I did that. And B, I want to do it more. It happens a lot. And I think it's just always if always the move is generosity and helping, then this just builds up this massive goodwill. And I think, Bob, just to go a step farther, I think what a lot of people don't understand is relationships grow exponentially. So if we're always being helpful with an individual, it's sort of like dollar cost averaging in the stock market. Things go up very fast over time. If you're always investing in the market, same thing, always investing in people. What people don't understand, though, is with relationships, unlike stocks, the people actually talk to each other. So as we help a bunch of people in one organization or ecosystem, or some percentage of people know each other, the exponential growth of the relationship, a total of the system, goes up even faster than we expect. It's like a really steep exponential curve, because we only hear about like 1 out of 1,000 times when somebody says, "Hey, I ran into somebody. I was telling them you're great." Like if we bump into somebody, they might mention it if they had just talked to somebody the day before. But that's like 1 out of 1,000. It's far more often we talk about folks and we never circle back to them and we said nice things or bad things. So if we are always being helpful, always being generous, that pays off so fast that it's almost hard for the mind to comprehend it. That's why generosity is just always the winning move.
Because you're saying word of mouth takes over. Like
Yep.
they tell 12 people they're close to, he is a great person. He helped me at a tough time in my career. And that spreads. They look at your LinkedIn profile and your company page. Oh yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy who helped Bill. I think I want to connect with Mo on LinkedIn. Like making investments, right?
Exactly it. You just time in the market, not timing the market. And it's that consistent investment that helps. And I'll give control back to you because the interviewer, but I do want to promote your work just for a second. The amazing thing about thought leadership is it's portable and it's shareable. So if somebody's doing both, again, we're back to deep functional experts that are building a personal brand. Thought leadership is what's going to get us there. Also building this relationship ecosystem, doing both creates a flywheel, because you and I both just landed the plane and really emphasized the idea of building the relationship ecosystem. If we're also always putting out great content, it lets the raving fans rave. So just the very fact that we had a book launch, Give to Grow, I can't tell you how many people are buying books to hand to their friends. Well, then that's more people hearing about our thought leadership, which is more people to help. One without the other, just only being a great relationship person, but not having deep expertise in thought leadership. You're fun to go to the ball game with, but not many people have time for that. Only thought leadership with no relationship ecosystem is great. But like you said, you can sort of come across as a jerk or not enough people know about you. It's doing both that really builds a business.
And also, I think, Mo, one of the key things I think you said in the book and you're saying now is it gives us psychic benefits. It's
Yeah.
not just the money. It's the psychic benefits of knowing we helped somebody.
Yeah.
We help them grow. We help them get through a difficult time. I have read, as you can tell, a lot of your book, and I've also ordered 2 copies and sent them to other people, and I'm going to order a copy for actually for all of my kids. They all could use this.
Oh, that's great.
So you talk about the idea of being strategic.
Yeah.
Where to place your time, develop relationships. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, there's some great research on this too. I think at this point in the interview, a lot of people could think, wow, generosity sounds great, but it sort of feels like you're running around the field throwing daisies, like it's some kind of Pollyanna thing. That's not actually the case. What the literature shows, and there's some great research out of Penn on this, is that if we stratify people into 3 groups: givers, the opposite is takers, and the middle is matchers. So givers give without any expectation of anything in return. Takers take, trying to get everybody to do their work for them. Matchers are like, I'll do this if if you do that for me, almost like a negotiation every time, transactional.
What Mo is referring to here is research done by a professor at University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business by the name of Adam Grant. Grant is an organizational psychologist who wrote a book about research he had done called Give and Take. In his book, Grant had done about 10 years of research on organizations ranging from Google to the U.S. Air Force. He categorized people in these and other organizations in three ways: as givers, takers, and matchers. Givers are rare, they help others out, and they prefer things to go that way. Takers are the opposite. They focus on themselves. As Grant wrote, takers tilt reciprocity in their own favor, putting their own interests ahead of others' needs. Boy, do I know a lot of takers. Then Grant described people he called matchers. Matchers try to balance out giving and taking. They seek reciprocity.
Well, the researchers actually thought givers would be the top of the heap, and that's not what happened. A big chunk of the givers were the top of the heap, with matchers next, takers third, but a big chunk of the givers were at the bottom. And the difference between the unsuccessful and the successful givers was that the people who were the successful givers made a bet. They prioritized A, what they were going to give, who they were going to give to, what they're going to do. And B, they sized the give relative to the expected value of what they would get in return. So again, can't say it enough, no expectation of anything in return. But as an example, a college student reaches out to you and says they went to your university and says, hey, can we go golfing? I would love to hear more about your career, 5-hour investment. Or your boss's boss reaches out to you the same day and says, hey, I would love you to do this project for me. It's really important. So-and-so said you'd be good at it. Let's say it's a 5-hour investment. Well, unsuccessful givers just do both. They have there's no filter. It's like people ask me for things, I do things. They tended to get burned and burn out, according to the research. The successful big giver said, hey, this college kid that reached out to me, I'm gonna help, but I'm gonna pull that down to a 15-minute quick Zoom call. And I'm going to maybe even make them do some work, like look at my LinkedIn profile and send me 3 questions ahead of time. Like I might even create another filter around it. But I'm going to pull that 5-hour ask down to 15 minutes. This 5-hour ask my boss's boss asked me for, I might actually do some nights and weekends work and dial it up to 20. I got a shot here at getting to the C-suite I didn't have before, whatever it is. So givers actually do win. They can also, nice guys and gals can also finish last. So we got to figure out which giver we are. Let's be strategic. And then B, we want to have a filter. What do we say yes to? What do we say no to? And C, we want to scale the give to the size of the expected value while also not expecting anything in return. If we do those things, then we have this just max chance of helping others succeed, and that's going to help us succeed as well.
Yeah, and I love the term you use, scale, scale what you're giving in return, because I guess if you say, well, 3 out of 100 people I think could help my career, so I'm not going to pay any attention to the 97 who I think I bet they're not going to help me. If you don't respond, you say, sorry, can't help you, right? I don't hear you saying that, just disregard the 97 and focus on 3. You're saying, well, you've got to scale your response here. But otherwise, if you deal with all 100 equally, you're not going to be doing a lot for anybody.
It's a great way to say it. So if someone legitimately and authentically reaches out to me for help, I'm always going to respond to that. I might say, no, hey, can't do it right now, slammed. And I'll get a specific and authentic and real reason. If somebody spams me and asks for something, I don't feel like I owe that a response. But for those 97 requests or whatever the math is, that it doesn't make sense because the expected value isn't there, don't have the time, whatever. We're going to give a really polite pass on that. And then for those other 3, we're really going to double down. Now, the math might not be 97 to 3. It might be 60-40, 50-50, 30-70, whatever, depending on your career and your goals. But it's the ability to say yes and no to the right things, and for the things we say yes to do that scaling where we're like, hey, I know the request is for X, but what should I actually invest in this based on what it could do for me?
Does the give to grow concept apply equally to entrenched thought leaders, meaning they're undeniably seen as experts in their niche? Does it apply as equally to them as it does aspiring thought leaders, people who they have some deep expertise, but they're not really known because of whatever reasons. They haven't published or they haven't marketed well what they published, but they're kind of the sleeping experts. And soon, with the right people to help them, their hope is to become a recognized thought leader. Does it apply more to the aspiring thought leaders than the reigning thought leaders, or not?
I would say or not, and here's why. That one technique that you and I went back and forth on, that give to get idea, would it be helpful if we blank? And we gave all those examples. That is the key to making thought leadership successful. I'm already assuming you write great thought leadership because people are watching, listening to your podcast. So they already got the best guiding them. So I'm assuming it's A++. Well, the key to success after that is getting the thought leadership in front of people and making the offer. Would it be helpful if we blank? And there's your give to get. It's the half-day workshop, the introduction to a client, whatever. Well, if we then think about aspiring thought leadership, that works for them because they're not only going to build a personal brand with the thought leadership itself, but they're actually going to get in front of prospects and clients and partners so that they can actually start rolling up their sleeve and helping them, generosity. And we're going to scale the size of that. Now that we're farther down the road, we're going to scale the size of that gift to be relative to the side of the expected payoff. The interesting twist for people that are already at the top of their game is they need give to gets too, because they're likely doing the give to gets in their head. And they're frustrated many times that other people can't do it. So what they can do is design that, let's say it's a data analysis with a benchmarking thing that we do with a 2-hour readout. Well, they can design that, build it out, productize it, make that give to get experience for the client or the prospect and their team just bomb proof. Like it's these 15 steps. This is exactly how to do it. It takes 3 weeks and 1 day. You set up this meeting here are all the steps you do it. Well, once you systematize a give to get, what that top of their game thought leader can do is get scale. So what's better than one person running around sharing thought leadership and doing give to gets and driving business? 20 people. What's better than 20 people? 200 people. So it's in the systemization of all this. One piece of thought leadership can actually, just one piece, one really good one, can scale infinitely if we have enough people applying the concepts through a give to get at clients, and then if we have enough people to deploy after we get hired. So it's actually that give to get process that either the aspiring person needs to develop it so they can build a business, the top of their game thought leader needs to develop it so that they can get impact and scale and get other people doing the thing they already know how to do. That's the chef kiss of growth right there.
Have you seen any, say, large professional firms, or they don't have to be large, mid-sized, where they've marketed their thought leaders, 3 or 4, 8 or 12, very well. And now they're doing this. They're saying, we need to scale this person's, relationships up really well. And he or she just doesn't have 24 hours in the day to do all the things that are necessary for his or her tribe out there. Who's doing that well? And what are they doing?
Well, countless people. There was one organization we worked with where they did very deep asset management and prioritization for large power companies. Well, how do you do that? Well, first of all, you have to have an inventory. And then once you have an inventory, you have to prioritize. And then you've got to figure out what your CapEx is going to look at over a multi-year period to make this work. Well, those are really hard projects to say yes to. So what they did is they created thought leadership around it. Like, here's what the best do. And then the give to get was showing people a survey, or not a survey, but a database of here's what everybody because they knew all the power. Here's what everybody does on average. But that was like give to get one, where they would share the database. And then what's the person thinking about that they're meeting with? Well, how do I compare to this? We'll say, hey, well, it only costs X dollars. It was a really small number. We can actually get your data and benchmark against it. It made it like a no-brainer to say yes to a small paid engagement. Well, once they had that, well, guess what the next thing was? Oh my gosh, you've got red lights here and yellow lights there and a couple of green lights here, but we got a problem. What do? Now we can hire you for this big multi-year engagement that's tens of millions of dollars. So the point with all that is it's really hard to just give a speech at a conference or call somebody up and try to get hired for tens of millions of dollars. It's a lot easier to create magnetic thought piece, then meet with somebody and say, would it be helpful if I shared the database with you? Then in that meeting say, would it be helpful if you paid small number X to benchmark yourself against the database? And then it's in that conversation that it gets really comfortable. Once you can legitimately show them they can save hundreds of $1,000,000 by spending tens of millions, that's when it gets easier to get hired.
We didn't talk about Adam Grant by name, but Adam Grant, the Give and Take book.
Yeah.
Adam Grant, by the way, and you may know this, he became the youngest tenured professor at Wharton.
Amazing.
Because he was using the same principles in that book, which is he is known to go out of his way for Wharton students to help them, get internships, to get jobs, to help them with coursework, classwork that they're having difficulty with. Here I want to talk about Adam Grant again. One of the things that propelled Grant to global fame as a thought leader was a feature story that the New York Times Sunday magazine published on him in 2013. It mentioned that Grant, who at the time was a 31-year-old professor, was the top-rated and youngest tenured professor at the Wharton School of Business. The article talked about such things as his promises to students to introduce them to all of his contacts on LinkedIn. The writer of the article said helpfulness is Grant's credo. He is the college professor who is always nominating another for an award or taking the time to offer a thoughtful critique or letter of recommendation for students. The article said Grant does that about 100 times a year. So he practices his research findings. And he said to me, well, he's the youngest, probably not an accident that he's the youngest tenured professor. He's like age 31. He was a tenured professor at Wharton.
Well, and even from them going on to heights that really nobody else at Wharton's gone to, like even amazing researchers to have the success he's had with his books and his impact and his speaking. And Adam's amazing. And I feel like 1 million people feel like they're best friends with Adam. Like I don't know Adam super well. We've been on a couple phone calls, but when I email him, he emails me back within like 24 hours. Like I don't even know how he does it. I almost sometimes think he has to have somebody answering for him, except that he'll mention things that only I know. Like it has to be you. Like I don't know how he's doing it. He's unbelievably generous. And now he will scale up or down his involvement. He'll tell you no if he doesn't have time, and he does it quickly. And you just think, God, you're almost left thinking, I can't even believe I got a response. But he's when it comes to being a strategic giver, obviously he's the expert in the field, but he's on a completely different planet than anybody else. He's so good, and his success is largely because of it.
I've had all the questions. What questions should I have asked you that I didn't?
It's a great one. I'm actually interested in hearing from you. I think a lot of times people think of thought leadership in isolation and business development in isolation. And I think a big part of what you and I talked about today is no, folks, merge these two. If we think of it not from our perspective, which is where you can split those up, but if we think of it as a client or from a prospect's perspective, they don't think of these as two different things. They think of these as, I read your article or the chapter of the book or heard the podcast or whatever the thought leadership is. I reached out to you. I want you to use your unique expertise to help me solve my problem. I'd love to meet you, but it seems intimidating. Like, if we can break down those barriers to make it really easy for somebody to reach out and easy for us to start helping them, that's when we get hired. But it's the merging of the creation of the content with also the humanistic process of actually talking to people and building this ecosystem we're talking about. I'd kick it back to you and say, what do you think is the most important thing to think through in that whole process? I want to take notes. I want to hear what you say.
I think arrogant thought leaders who really don't care and show it in many ways to the client, that they don't really care about the client's success. They really care more about selling something. Those folks don't tend to last very long, even if they have brilliant ideas and they gain an audience for a couple of years. They fade in the sunset pretty quickly. And I have some in mind, but I'm not going to mention any names. Other thought leaders, unless they're creating new stuff all the time, and the new stuff is even better than the old stuff. And that's a pretty hard thing to do.
That's very rare. Yeah.
Really hard to come up with more than one blockbuster idea. Coming up with one blockbuster idea is difficult enough. The ones who are arrogant and really only care about themselves more or less and selling, they are shooting stars. They burn out. Even though they keep publishing, they're not followed as much. The ones who I think care about the client as much as they care about their own ideas and they show it. They show that care to the client by, call it, donating their time, helping the client with personal issues, with career issues, with boss issues, with lack of organizational support issues. I've seen their client can move to another firm, but they also bring that thought leader into another firm, or a thought leadership practitioner who changes. They say, I moved to another firm. So-and-so is really good at this. We need to bring her or him in to ghostwrite our next book. The thought leadership professional who looks at this profession, maybe any profession, as I'm investing in relationships. Yeah, I'm going to do great work, but I'm investing in relationships, and I need to be very careful about relationships I go overboard on, because we all don't have, we don't want to work 16-hour days, and we have families, and we can't just do work all the time. As you would call it, very strategic about where they put their time and who they help more than others, although they're receptive to helping a lot of people, but certain people only so much and others much more. Those people get a lot farther. Two things. They get a lot farther in their profession. And two, they wind up feeling much better about when they look back on their careers, like I've been doing the last couple of years at age 69. They look back on their careers, I think, with a lot more, I don't want to use the word happiness.
Satisfaction. Yeah.
Satisfaction. Yeah. It's like, wow, the number of people I've helped, it's a great feeling. And it's even a better feeling than the compensation that one has received for good work over those years. Yeah, that's important. But having people come up to you unsolicited, people you've helped, and say, Bob or Mo, you really helped me. This was so critical. I just get so much personal satisfaction out of that. It kind of can carry a whole week or a whole month. I have a note on my wall behind here from a client. I love this client. He died of pancreatic cancer last year ago, July, at a young age in his early 60s. Fantastic person. He wrote a note to me many years ago, and I'm going to have to try not to get choked up about it. He said, Bob, you've had a wonderful impact on me, et cetera, et cetera. And I keep looking at that note, and, that makes me feel as good as the things we help him do. And so, the personal, getting the personal satisfaction in this business, I would tell young people, should be, I'm not going to say should, you'll get as much satisfaction from that as from the financial success. So the kudos you get can really count. And the more kudos you get, the more work you'll get, by the way. But the kudos alone, you will wind up valuing, especially when you're toward the tail end of your career.
Yeah, that's just so well said. And at some point in everybody's career, it's not about the money or the title or the accolades. It's about who you impacted. It's about the impact. And that was just a beautiful, beautiful story around that.
I predict your book, it'll be a huge bestseller for business development people in professional services and other industries, but it will also be a book that I would tell every college graduate to read, because your advice applies beyond the buyer-seller relationship. It just does. It's the way to look at one's career and say, I got to invest in my career, but part of that is investing in relationships with key people.
Yeah.
And then giving back.
Yeah, I had somebody the other day. We did our first ever conference, and we had a couple hundred people. We called it Give to Grow Live. So imagine, Bob, 200 people in a room. That was the max size of the room. We filled it up, chairs in the hallways. And imagine 200 people that want to learn more. So everybody was already good. These were like the people that are already at the top of their game. And they believe in giving, or they wouldn't come to something called Give to Grow Live. So we had 200 people sharing stories about helping each other. And we had this one exercise where you actually come up with very specific ways to help a small group of 10. So we had 20 pods of 10. So we'll literally have thousands of follow-ups that happen after the event of one person helping another person. And at the end of it, somebody came up to me and they said, when I first picked up Give to Grow, the book, I thought it was going to be about me, about how I can grow my business. And he said, now after reading it and being here, he's like, this is how to live your life. And that's the little stealthy thing about the book that we didn't want to lead with that. But when people, especially when they read, it's about the impact, which is the last chapter, like you saw, it's very, very much aligned with the story you told. And that the impact is much greater than we think and much more important than we think typically. I hope people finish the book and they realize, yeah, this is going to help me grow my business like way more than I've been doing. But I hope they put the book down, look at the ceiling, and just think, this is going to help me with my family, with my life, with every relationship I've got. And that's my little secret goal.
I am confident it's going to help a lot of people grow as people, as a person.
Thank you.
And you've done a wonderful job. And it's a gift. It's a gift to anybody who reads the book.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I'm excited. And yeah, so the one thing I will add, because it's free, is if people want to get a free training on this, they can go to giveToGrow.info, giveToGrow.info. And I almost didn't bring it up because I felt like we had such a great touching moment at the end, but it's free. And it's like, if you can imagine the pressure that an author feels to give things away when they write a book called Give to Grow. We actually made the whole course, all these downloads and things and videos for me and things, we actually made it standalone outside of the book. So if somebody wants to go write the book, please do. That's great. It'll be better if you do. But this whole course is actually standalone too. So if somebody they don't have $20 for a book or whatever, they can actually go to giveToGrow.info and get this free course.
I think it's a good opportunity for people to get a sample of the merchandise.
Yeah. We'll give them the experience of the book. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Mo. It's been a wonderful conversation. Maybe we'll revisit it in a year when you're a guru out there, and I hope you'll still return my emails.
I will. Well, I love competing on thought leadership, so you've got a friend for life in me.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you left a like and if you shared the episode with your colleagues. Everything Thought Leadership is a video and podcast series from Buday TLP. It's for thought leaders and thought leadership professionals, the people who help experts get recognized as thought leaders. You can find out more about Buday Thought Leadership Partners at budaytlp.com.